Oh boy, it's that time again. Time for another episode of the low effort, lower budget NBP show. As always, I'm your host, President Daltmick, bringing you more heart-pounding Blood Bowl action from the NBP universe. And I want to open this week's show with a letter I received from an organization. And this is an organization I've talked about many times on the show before, and I have not given them proper credit because I have been mispronouncing their name. I received this letter from this organization. There's blood all over this. It's barely written in English. In fact, most of it is in Chaos Dwarf, and I've had to get this loosely translated. Not to mention the smell. This thing smells horrible. But it is addressed to me, and I will read it. This is a rough translation. To whom it may concern, crossed out, Daltmick's written above that. It has come to our attention that you have been disrespecting our fine program throughout this season by constantly mispronouncing our name. So in order to alleviate this, we have provided you a helpful pronunciation guide. And here it's written out in plain English, little parentheses, how to pronounce and everything. And that states, Zorn Uzku Zealots. So that's the Chaos Dwarf team, coached by Coach Midway Monster. And his organization has sent me a helpful pronunciation guide. They go on to say, pray that we do not crush you in the same way that we have crushed the orcs this week. Any further mispronunciations of our fine organization will result in a similar fate. So there you have it, folks. The Zorn Uzku Zealots sending me a message there. So I'll be sure to properly pronounce that name from now on. But that aside, we'll move on to our first segment. And our first segment is sponsored by Goblin Gambling. If you have an insatiable urge to gamble, they have an insatiable urge to give you your fix. NBP-Pro is not affiliated with Goblin Gambling in any way, shape, or form. The show is merely sponsored by them. Moving on, that brings us to Tar and Feather versus Ancient Empires. Two strong conferences in the history of NBP continue to be a strong conference this year. And they provide us a strong showing of Blood Bowl. It would be the Tar and Feather that edged that matchup, though, with the total record of 2-1-1. And that also puts the AFC versus NFC record at 2-1-1 and 1-1-2. Those results are tallied up by the matchups of 1v1, 2v1, so on. You know, you all played. I'm going to start out with that 4v4 matchup there. Both teams I've talked about on Relegation Watch, and I mentioned that last week, I know. But that is Coach Knockout Joe versus Blake Nuts 666, putting Joe's Imaginations versus Yeah the Boys. Two teams that everybody loves, even if they do not have winning records. They still have a strong fan base, and I think they're league favorites by a lot of people. It's hard to dislike an orc team who leads the team in passing. The league in passing, I should say. But we'll get to that later. Anyways, Joe's Imaginations was a 2-0 win on that one. Blake Nuts still on relegation watch there, but Joe clawing his way out of the bottom, looking to take third place in Tar and Feather Division. Moving up to third place, we have Go Dogs Sikkim versus Burzo, and that is the Gordia Bulldogs. They were fighting a magnificent battle, but they did not fight enough in their 0-1 loss to Dinosaurus Rex, that new team that I mentioned early in the season, how it's their first pro season, are making a name for themselves and beating an established coach and a strong team, and they're 1-0. So, it's 1-1 now. But moving up into the second place game. Yours truly, behind the helm of the Badass Women's Association, take on Commissioner Cozy and the Silverstrad Stormhold. That's not correct. Silverstrad Stormherd, the SSH team that I like so much, a strong Norse team by a strong coach, a very worthy opponent, a rivalry that Cozy leads, and 2 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw. That's our total rivalry in NBP. It seems we always go head-to-head in these inter-conference play, but this time there was no winner and there was no loser because it was a 1-1 draw. First game of the week, and we streamed it early in the morning on Sunday. That was a Red Eye Blood Bowl game. You've heard of Red Eye Flights? Red Eye Blood Bowl game there. Both of us running on no sleep the next day after that one. But alas, 1-1-1 was the total record after that one for the matchup, the strong matchup there between these two divisions. It was this game that was the deciding factor. 1v1 Coach Shushnik, that I've spoke about many times on this show before, versus Rocky is back. And that was Night of the Living Dread in a 2-1 victory against the Warp Fire Stones. Last year's finalists fell short once again this season against a very strong opponent. And I think this is the #1 coach in the league. I haven't crunched the numbers, but I think he firmly holds first place with that 2-1 victory. He's undefeated so far. He does have a draw, but is undefeated. And that is the matchup of Tar and Feather versus Ancient Empires. Moving on, I'm going to interject this with a fun fact. I mentioned, the boys before, and in fact, they are the team that has the most passes in NBP-Pro. You would think that's a elf team, right? Some kind of elf team. But you would be wrong. That is, the boys. They have 9 total passes. That's the most in NBP-Pro. And they also have 6 passes in 1 game. I believe that was the game against Kamikoze. But they have 6 passes in 1 game. They hold 2 passing records in NBP-Pro. And they're an orc team. Great work, Blake. Let's hope you can not get relegated so you can keep defending those records. Moving on to Deep Dark versus what looked like Beheaded Kings. And I'll start at 4th place again. That put Tons of Fun versus Josiah Frost. Terrible Ghouls versus Game of Gnomes. And this was a game that not many people thought were going to happen. In fact, it had to be played today, a day after the deadline. Luckily, Transfer Week gave them a little bit of leeway. There were some miscommunications there. It was going to go down as a 0-0 draw. It did stay a draw, but alas, they got SPP and touchdowns in a 1-1, a beautiful 1-1 that saw Tons of Fun scoring a Flesh Golem touchdown. That's something you don't see often, not even in dev play, and he did it in pro play. But Josiah answered with a strong halfling touchdown late in the game, giving Tons of Fun time to tie it, to take the win from the tie, I should say, but he just didn't quite make it. He ran out of time. Josiah made a strong play there. I say that a lot, but he made a strong play there and kept it 1-1. So, starting off in that division, it's a 1-1 draw. Moving up, we have Bortbot versus Legend T. Two strong coaches that are somehow in the middle of the road. I don't know. They've been here in NBP-Pro for what seems like forever, but they found themselves in the middle ground. Perhaps they're just in 2 tough conferences. They do play a lot of tough teams, so perhaps that's it. I'm going to grab a drink here of my trusty tea. Can't beat that southern tea. Anyway, that is a sinking ship in a 3-1 routing of the Scarface Scavengers V2. They're still struggling to find traction in this season. The Scarface Scavengers. They're a great team with a great coach, but they just can't find their footing. And Bort returns to the Bort of old by winning. So it is 1-0 in favor of the Deep Dark as we turn over to the second place game. Second place put Blue Six Max at those Villains of DC, and that's a team that just edged their way into second place with a victory over Bort to go against Coach Pong Hines behind the Lauren Rockets, the team, a fan favorite team, a team that has performed well, a coach that always performs well in Blood Bowl. He has divisions named after him in other leagues. That's Coach Pong Hines, and he wins 2-1 against a very vicious team that just couldn't prevent that last-minute play on the very last turn, scoring a touchdown to secure second place and stay second place in Beheaded Kings. That puts the total at 2. Snap. I have it here. Anyway, Bort won, so it's 1-1-1 all the way across the board. Again, a very close matchup. It's so ridiculous to see how these games played out just in different orders. And that is Coach Demented, former 2-time champion, against playoff hopeful Afro Chef, and that is the Cannibal Corpse falling 0-1 to the Super Street Fighter Elves. Super Street Fighter Elves continuing to make a name for themselves behind a well-known Blood Bowl coach. And they squeak out a 1-0 win against a 2-time champion. That is a strong quality win. That is a very good quality win this late in mid-season, I should say. Not late, but a very strong quality win. Putting the total at 2 total wins, 1 draw, 1 loss in favor of the Beheaded Kings division. That puts the total matchup at AFC versus NFC at 3-2-3. They're tied. The last division clash is going to decide the top conference of Week 4. This is a division I've talked about all season. So many great teams coming out of the Saltworks, and so many great teams just trying to climb to the top. It's just crabs in a bucket over there because they all want number 1 and they all beat each other up. But at number 4, we have Coach Rorik Dark versus the Prime Sinister in a good showing for the Amazons, the gorgeous ladies of Blood Bowl, and that is 3-1 victory against the Fun Guys. A Goblin team looking to get a punch or two in there on those Amazons, just couldn't quite make it. They tried their hardest, but in the end, the Amazons just edged out the win, and it's 1-0 in favor of Saltworks. Moving up to the third place game, we have Coach DK, my main man, versus Fantastic Dr. J, another team that I spoke about on Relegation Watch, and another team that I've spoke about on making a name for himself in NBP. You all know him. He's on the coaches board. And he edged out a 2-1 win behind his Kitchen Raiders against the Grim Reaping Institute. Dr. J continues to fall down the ladder, but he may be able to find footing once we get back into divisional play. So, it is now 2-0 in favor of Saltworks. Moving up to a coach I spoke about earlier. I did spoil this one earlier, but I think many of you have heard it by now. Midway Monster versus Wheelie 365. A matchup that was a lot closer on the field than we saw on paper. It was a 2-0 victory for the Zealots, but it was very close to a 1-1 until right toward the last. The dice just did not fall in Wheelie's favor. Unfortunately so. Everybody loves to see a good 1-1 draw. That's the game the Blood Bowl was meant for. But the spoils always go to the victor, especially here in NBP. 2 points is always worth more than 1 point in league standings, and that's what Midway did. He went for the 2-point play and won 2-0 with the Zorn Uzkul Zealots versus Boom Boom Shake the Room. Boom Boom Shake the Room on a small slide here. Let's see if they can pick back up next week in more divisional play. Intra-divisional play, I should probably say. So, once again, it's 3-0, folks. It's 3-0 in Saltworks' favor. Saltworks showing why they're one of the strongest conferences in all of NBP, why they have the highest ranked coaches in NBP. And that is bringing us on to number one. The first place game almost didn't matter in the grand scheme of things for the AFC versus NFC battle because the rest of Saltworks already decided. So, Coach Johnny at first place goes against Coach Jonah at first place. They went head-to-head and ended up in a 1-1 draw, putting Johnny's Rottens and the Rainforest Queens at potential to fall back to second place in their division. We'll probably see Jonah stay first since he got a draw and not a loss. But with Johnny getting that extra draw where Midway got a win, we're going to see him fall to second place. Now, while Johnny has been playing great all season and continued to play great, I would say tying a 1-1 game is playing pretty great when you're first in first place. But he still needed the win there. And as I said before, 2 points are worth more than 1 in league standings. So, we're probably going to see Midway as first place in the Saltworks division. So, the total overall there was 3 wins and 1 draw, no losses, in favor of Saltworks. So, that's your 3 matchup winners. You have a draw out of AFC. No, in fact, you have a loss out of Ancient Empires. You have a loss out of the Deep Dark Division and a loss out of the let's see. So Old World, sorry. Pulled a blank there. I don't have those. That's off script. I'm going off script. Anyways, so with a total record of 6-3-3, AFC is your champion of Week 4. The AFC wins the first clash. Let's see who wins Week 5. Will it be the AFC again, or will the NFC dispute and say that we're better, we win this week? So what I'm going to do is I will have a week winner of Week 5 between AFC and NFC, but I'll also keep an aggregate score after that to see who is the supreme division at the midweek break. You know, since we're clashing, why not see who's better? So, we'll move on to everyone's favorite segment, I think, the supposed cursed segment when the people I gave it to last week drew. So, I don't know how cursed it is, and this is a man who's won it before, and he doesn't seem very cursed. So, that's AFC coach in Week 4 is Coach Shushnik from Tar and Feather Division. As I've said before, I believe he's first place in the entire league after I crunched the numbers. Unless Midway somehow edged him out in SPP, he is handedly in first. I say handedly. He's got people on his tail. But that's Coach Shushnik out of Week 4. NFC Coach of the Week. One of the other first place teams to win their game. When a first place goes against a first place and they win their game, I kind of have to give that to them, and that is Coach Afro Chef. Afro Chef making his way into that award for the first time. Week 4 NFC Coach is Afro. Okay, what I'm going to also do this time is have AFC Coach of the first half. This is the coach that I think has performed the best in the AFC in the first 4 weeks of the season. Since we're halfway and into the transfer break now, I'm going to grab some more of this delicious water. Water that is sweet tea. And my AFC coach of the first half of the season is Coach Shushnik. I have to give it to him hands down. Midway is very close there, but Shushnik has been first in Tar and Feather Division since the get-go. He beat me Week 1, and everybody else in Tar and Feather has been And probably the AFC has been in his rearview mirror ever since. Midway is now first, more than likely in his division, but he hasn't had it as long as Shushnik has, so I have to give it to him, especially with him being his first season in NBP-Pro action, coming up out of the proving grounds, proving the success of that league, that project, that he comes up here and dominates. Great coach for AFC first half. Another coach I have to give it to, I've spoke about him a lot. Despite a loss on his card, I believe he's got a loss there. It may just be a draw. I really should have double checked it. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Like I said, it's all in one take, folks. But NFC coach of the first half is Coach Pong Hines and the Lauren Rockets. I have to give it to them just because you all have been watching. How many times have I talked about Pong all season long? I'm sure some of you are tired of hearing about the guy, but I'm not, because he keeps producing stats. So until some of you can hop up on your Blood Bowl high horse and dethrone him, I've got to give it to NFC first half champion Pong. Pong and Shushnik are the AFC and NFC coaches of the first half. I'm not doing a coach overall. I mean, I could, if you want me to, go by the standings. Look at the standings. That's the first coach overall of the first half. But the standings don't mean anything until the playoffs, when the top four go to the Knuffle Challenge Series. And if we were to go there this week, if this were the end of the season, it would be tough deciding who those top four are. That's why we got 4 more weeks to decide who's making it there, who's making it to the best of the worst, and who's getting relegated. Stay tuned for more intense Blood Bowl action, folks. It's not stopping yet. We've got 4 more weeks of pro action, and we got playoffs, postseason. There's so much more, folks. We're not leaving yet. But I will, on top of that, mention my new competition, Season 3 of Lustria's Skink Federation Cup. Correction, Lustria's Stunty Federation Cup. Find out more on the forums. I posted a link in the chat. I'll post a link in the description. If you want to see mine and Cozy's game, I'm pretty sure it's on YouTube. It was on last week's episode in the description, but I'll put it there anyway. Last week's episode in the description. If you like the show, thumbs up. Give me comments how I can make it better. I'm out of things to do for an outro, I should say. I hope you enjoyed. Have a great week.